in their first season under this name. The Alpine Formula One team running the Alpine A521, powered by the same old Renault. Their two-driver lineup is a returning Fernando Alonso, again hailing from Spain, age 40, two-time Formula One world champion, even though it was a while ago, 2005 and 2006. He has 32
Before
race
Bitcoin
wins.
was invented.
Yeah, he has 32 race wins, 97 podiums, over a course of 314 races so far, and of course, he is the 2018-2019 World Endurance Drivers' Champion. Alongside him will be the 25-year-old Frenchman Esteban Ocon. His best recorded finish was second in Sakir at the end of last year. He has 38 top 10 finishes since 2017, and of course is the 2015 GP3 champion.
Feel the hype, King. Feel the hype. Can you feel the blue running through your veins?
Feel the hype from the world's thickest airbox.
Oh, that airbox is so thick.
It did not skip its trapeze day. Oh boy. I might do the rest of the podcast like this.
Yes, but yes,
Alpine.
Alpine is out here saying that airboxes are so like side pods are so 1973. Like
they're taking it back to like the teapot cars of the late 70s.
Oh god, yeah. That's the reason why the Renault's airbox is so dummy thick with 38 Cs. They moved all of the radiators, as much of the cooling components as they could, up in the car so they could shrink the side pods. And car looked okay in testing.
Damn.
This is actually their third year on this tub, because they carried over their tub from 2019 to 2020. So this it's an old girl, but they were solid last year. They've now thrown Fernando Alonso into the mix. I have no idea how that's going to turn out. It could either turn out really good or really bad. This is Fernando Alonso we're talking about.
Well, even Alonso himself has admitted this is a multi-year project. Don't expect anything from the first year. He's already thinking to 2020.
Everyone knows that. Yeah, this is another year where really it's very much interim for this team. Car was reliable enough in testing. Car looked good enough in testing. I see them maybe moving forward a little bit, but overall kind of holding station from where they were last year.
I mean, the way I look at it, this team is just like if there was an award for, like, you know how Zero Punctuation does his games of the year and there's a bland list in the middle? This is like the smack dab blandest team right here. It'll be Alpine livery champions for the year, because I do love the metallic blue, but there's one element of this that I don't think enough people have talked about this. Losing Daniel Ricciardo was a big blow for this team. Ricciardo was outstanding last year.
He was a driver of the year candidate.
He was a driver of the year candidate that no one talked about. Everyone was talking about Pacheco and Gasly, and obviously Hamilton for obvious reasons. No one mentioned how good Daniel Ricciardo was, which I thought was baffling to me, because I thought he was outstanding.
Esteban Ocon walked into that team having been rated very highly by everyone not named Max Verstappen, and he got curb stomped.
He got smacked around by Daniel Ricciardo. Don't get me wrong, Daniel Ricciardo is I've said it before, a borderline top 3 driver in the world right now in terms of the current paddock. And Renault had a gift having him in the seat for 2 years. In fact, there was a clip of Drive to Survive that may or may not have leaked out today where he actually spoke about leaving the team, and he looked at McLaren and he thought, that team's made gains. I'm going to go to McLaren, basically. And he basically admitted that he'd already been in talks with Zach Brown from as early as about halfway through last season. So, there was already rumblings that Ricciardo already had one foot out of the door like, before 2020 had even started. Like, 2019, we're talking about. So, despite that, Ricciardo
They blew all that money. They blew all that money for Ricciardo to look across to the McLaren Technology Center and think, I want me some of that.
It's the bloke looking at the two women meme on Twitter.
Exactly.
McLaren and Alpine's looking like in disgust from behind. It's terrible. No, look, like I said, losing Ricciardo is a massive blow to this team. Fernando is a wild card at this point. We don't know what he's going to do. He's as King alluded to, the fact he's already talking down his estimates is not a good sign, as far as I'm concerned.
What were you expecting? It's Fernando Alonso.
The other way around.
Everyone should have known this.
Because Fernando Alonso's ego normally suffocates the air out of any room he's sitting in. He normally talks up, not down. I
think they're gonna be okay, and that's what I'm gonna give them. But I think the weakest part of this team is now gone. Searle is out of there.
He got
Searle
the
is gone.
fire.
They've restructured
know
whole management of the team, which is pretty much all that they need to do. Because now I get to inject my thoughts about the team for which one of my favorite drivers of all time now races for. I am under no illusions that Fernando Alonso is going to win any races with Alpine this year. I'm not even sure if he's going to sneak in a shock podium in some wet weather race where like 15 cars blow up or something. I know better than to get that.
I think they could. I think they could snag the odd podium. That's all I'm going to give them.
Yeah, Alpine could snag that odd podium. And I think Esteban Ocon's going to be the guy that gets most of them.
Though, I think we also should mention, Fernando Alonso is going to be racing this entire season with a metal plate in his jaw.
Yeah, he got clipped on his way to the supermarket riding his bike. That was scary. That was not good.
Scary. The immediate Nicky Hayden flashbacks I got was not nice. So I'm very glad that he is, relatively speaking, okay. Because I know broken jaws are not fun at all.
That sucks.
It's a nasty injury. But, that's going to be a factor in all this as well. And I've got to mention as well, from a drive, like, RJ alluded to the fact, big reshuffle, Lauren Rossi's now CEO, I think Marcin Budkowski's in there now, Davide Brivio was the big high-profile move over as well from Suzuki's MotoGP championship winning team from last year. And he's going to be there in a management role as well. I'm a bit worried about Esteban Ocon as well. And don't get me wrong, this is not all Ocon's fault. I feel a little bit bad for him because he's had nothing but quality teammates his entire career, and he peaked in his rookie season. It's like his rookie season was outstanding, and then the stock's slowly gone down year on year.
He spent his whole second season having a fist fight with Perez.
Yeah, and then he came back.
We kind of forget that, like, in his second year at Force India, now some other team, Esteban Ocon was outperforming Perez in everything but the score sheet. We kind of forget that conveniently because of how badly things went after a year out of, like, competitive driving. And that's going to be the thing that worries me. If Alpine does well and Alonso isn't carrying the team, well, then Alpine has just spent all this money to bring back a two-time world champion for the third tenure at this organization out of Enstone for nothing. And if Alonso is leading that success, is going to be an indictment against Esteban Ocon, and it's going to be the second time that Alonso has buried a promising young talent for that mid-2010s generation.
There's no situation where both of those teammates come out of this looking great.
I hate it so much!
But I mean, brutal. Really? Like, Fernando's 40. Like, he's got nothing to lose.
That's part of the problem. Like, I know.
No, because then if Ocon beats him, people are just going to say, oh, well, Alonso's an old man.
Yeah, but the old man shouldn't be beating you then, should he?
I think Dre put it well. That year against Ricciardo really damaged his stock.
I think it's more race rust down anything. I think Ocon's going to pick it up.
But you can't blame race rust like 10 races into the season.
This is a spoiler alert into my Alpine script that's going to be out tomorrow, but it's not a good sign when the guy you replaced had more stock than you halfway through last season, because Hulkenberg genuinely had two outstanding fill-in jobs at the artists formerly known as Racing Point.
It's fucking ridiculous that they replaced Hulkenberg in the first place.
Right, but they wanted to keep the stockholders happy after having to sack 15,000 people. Like that's
well, maybe
what you do,
Carlos
you hire a
Ghosn
Frenchman.
shouldn't have done crimes.
It always comes back to Carlos Ghosn doing crime.
It always does. It always goes back to Carlos Ghosn do crime.
And maybe Hulkenberg shouldn't have demanded to be paid the same salary as the highest paid employee in the company.
Well, then why did they give Ricardo so much goddamn money?
Can you blame Hulkenberg for asking when the other guy was brought in on like 4 times the salary the average midfielder gets? Like, maybe 5 or 6 times more. Like, Ricardo was on 20 million a year when he was at Renault. I mean, I can't blame Hulkenberg for thinking, I'm 30 years old, I need to secure this bag. Like, Ricardo's 30, he just got a 2 for 40 million pound contract. So, no, like, I think there's an awful lot of ways this could go wrong for Alpine, and there's not very many ways it can go right.
Okay.
Like, because
they already botched the last 5-year plan. What's the next 5-year plan?
Because I said, they promised race wins a year ago.
I think it's named Uralkali Renault Haas F1 team.
Oh, damn.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky.
Hey, WADA can't stop this. France and Russia have the same national colors.
If
yeah,
red,
you
white, and blue,
just turn the flag the other way, change the shades a little bit, you'll be fine.
Yeah, if you don't.
Next team on the list,
right
because
now,
I'm tired of talking about the bucket. I'm tired of talking about the blue paint. Let's move on.
If you don't stop this right now, I'm going to talk about Scuderia Ferrari Mission Winnow, and you are going to like it. They have Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz Jr., the Chuck and Chuck show. Leclerc, 8th last year's standings. Sainz was 6th in 2020 with McLaren. Both of them had 2 podiums apiece with their respective plucky, fighting, scrappy midfield teams, which is where I'm classifying Ferrari now. Leclerc has a Formula 2 title. Sainz has a Formula Renault 3.5 title. They're both excellent drivers who share about 8 common brain cells. And Ferrari added a touch of highlighter green, which does not contrast well with the look of the car at all. But really, I think we take it if the car was, like, not shit for a change.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, in testing, that Ferrari SF21 certainly was a 2021 Formula One World Championship car.
The car looked like it wet itself and then its power unit let go on day 1. Before lunch.
Okay. Fair enough to Ferrari. I mentioned the 2 cars earlier that changed. The Ferrari this year is maybe the first time in a couple of years the Ferrari actually looks contemporary.
Yeah.
Because last year, the presentation happened, I'm just like, is that it? I mean, it's got Viking horns, but, like, is that it?
And Cam's the proper car nut who looks at parts on these cars. I just go, not sure about the colour.
Looking at the car this year... looked like a Ferrari. That's about all I'll say about it.
This is what you're paying for, Patreon backers.
Last
it looks like a Ferrari.
Last year when Vettel spun at turn 11 in Bahrain, we were in genuine disbelief that Ferrari could have produced a car that could lose the rear at that corner. Day 1, Carlos Sainz spins in the same way.
Yeah, that was another storyline that I read up on, is that Carlos Sainz has taken a while to, shall we say, acclimate to the idiosyncrasies of this Ferrari SF21.
Well, by all accounts, Carlos Sainz has a little bit of a similar situation with Sebastian, where he needs the rear of the car not so much to be so strong that it is inducing understeer, but merely work.
That would be nice.
I mean, a lot of this Ferrari looks like slight revisions to last year. A lot of it looks like follow what others are doing. And in the center of it is a power unit that by all accounts has gained plenty of horsepower and is still significantly behind everyone else because Formula One is an open development war. If you lose as much horsepower as Ferrari did with the closing of the loopholes in 2019, you're not getting that back until your next big regulation change.
and even potentially having the best driver pairing in the sport, potentially for raw talent.
It's at least in the top 3.
For ability or bootlicking?
Yes. And Leclerc said the car felt okay, that it was a good base. But I mean, I get the impression we're going to see another year of 2 phenomenally talented, very bootlicking drivers stuck in the middle of the field because Ferrari is spending all this money to do nothing.
It's gonna be a very interesting season for the Chuck and Chuck or Chad and Chad show.
The Chad and Chad show works better considering their 2 personalities.
Oh yeah, big Chad energy.
Like, I think people are gonna be like, "Oh, is Ferrari gonna get a race win this year?" No, we're gonna be.
I got mocked relentlessly the same time last year. I said Ferrari isn't winning a race after preseason. You all told me I was out of my mind.
He never
I don't care if I'm off the
ever.
script. I don't care if I'm way off script. You know what I bet?
This.
You know what I bet this year?
Please don't say no podium.
No, I'm not going that far because I know Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc is just that good that he could pull a podium out of his ass somewhere.
He did that twice this past season.
I bet that Ferrari will go winless, or I have to sit my own ass down in front of my 4K TV and willingly watch Driven.
Oh no!
Oh god!
You know what? I'll take you up on that because you know what I think. I think
I already bet this.
Is going to win a race.
I bet this in a Jimmy Broadbent Discord. This is already in writing. They got my ass in 4K.
How do you still have hair on your head after that? How is it not at least grey?
For the sake of everyone on our Discord server, I hope that Ferrari does not win a race, because I do not want to watch Driven again.
Cam, what the fuck have you done? Have you dragged this into hell
None
here?
of you are involved. This is a personal bet. Charles Leclerc is going to be great, not get anywhere near a win. Carlos Sainz, I have no idea. Mattia Binotto's already basically said he's a seat warmer for Mick, which will certainly go well when, if Carlos somehow ends up toppling Leclerc in that team. Which one of them are they paying to not come to work so they can get Mick in that seat?
Because that's the thing people like to conveniently forget is that Carlos Sainz Jr. at most stops in his career has been a perennial Driver of the Year candidate on his town alone. He's been one of the few people that's been able to match Max Verstappen in similar equipment.
Yep.
But he's a seat warmer at Ferrari.
Yeah, you'd be like, hey...
And the team principal has already said as much.
Yeah, it's like, hey, Carlos, you're going to really enjoy your promotion to our hypercar team.
It's like he never left the Red Bull Academy. I said it before. It's like him and Max Verstappen are a lot alike for both good and bad reasons, and now it feels like he's never left Red Bull in the first place. I think Chuck will win a race. I think Charles will win a race.
Okay.
I think Charles Leclerc is going to win a race. And if he doesn't, I'll watch Driven.
No!
RJ, you are not a clown, nor are you the entire circus. You right now are the very concept of comedy.
Why? Oh! This hurts me. It hurts me in 4K. It hurts me in 4K to see such ardent masochism go on in this Discord server.
Render this video in 4K.
I can't.
You better upscale it to like 240 FPS.
1080p. I need the 20-second clip in 1080p of RJ saying on the record that he will watch Driven willingly by choice if Charles Leclerc wins a race.
Charles Leclerc.
Look, at the end of the day, we all just want to watch a good romantic comedy, and that's what I feel like Driven is.
No,
but it is what Ferrari is, and just for good measure, in the off season they had further technical shakeups, because what you really want when your team is just up a creek without a paddle is zero stability. Mattia Binotto, please retire.
All I'm saying is
I think that's enough. Dre, the floor is yours. Get the baby oil, get the British Racing Green, and get the Strawberry Starburst.
I have my moisturizer here ready to go. It's like I'm gonna make it my cricket style war paint. Let's go out, boys.
Save me.
It's time. It's time for the main event of the evening. It's the Aston Martin Cognizant Formula One team, brought to you by your host Dre Harrison. Sadly, Daniel Craig was not available to launch this part of the chat, although he was there for the car launch, which was nice to get a whole 15 seconds in while he's locked in a room.
We're gonna have to.
Yeah, you. What is fantastic there, Dre? Your internet cut out.
Yep.
Yeah. Fortunately, this moisturizer is still on my face.
So.
we might have to actually keep that in, because apparently the timing was so perfect, half the Discord just laughed itself to death.
So I'll read out the team facts. I think I got this.
An objective voice here.
An objective person will get through this. Okay.
How?
So,
what do you mean I'm not objective?
So, okay, fine, I'll do it. Aston Martin Cognizant Formula One team. Aston Martin AMR 21 Mercedes. Their first driver, a new signing and one you know so well, Sebastian Vettel of Germany, age 34. Four-time Formula One World Drivers' Champion, 53 wins, 121 podiums, 57 poles, 38 fastest laps, 3,018 points, and the vice champion of 2017 to 2018 during his 6-year, terrible, no good, very bad tenure at Ferrari. And in the other corner, Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll of Canada, age 23. Coming off a much improved year where he scored his first pole position in Turkey 2020, a pair of podiums at Italy and Sakir to add to his podium at Baku 2017, and is of course the 2016 FIA European F3 champion.
We here on the Most One On podcast are a totally impartial network.
Okay.
Now, we really got Dre's ass.
I got a question for y'all. I got a very important question. How are your hype levels feeling after a 3-day test filled with all sorts of mechanical issues?
Literally, we are in the inner core of the Earth at the very center, so we are equidistantly low to every other point on Earth.
4. Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you? All seriousness,
didn't go so good.
In all seriousness, I said it to Hazel on Twitter last week. I have a bad feeling this team is going to be the victim of its own hype, because people are very, very excited about this team. And look, I get it. Aston Martin is a sexy brand. So, of course, people are going to be all about the green, all about the Aston Martin marquee, all of the big name stuff that comes with it. You've brought in Sebastian Vettel. He's seemingly genuinely happy to be there. We don't know how much of that is just PR fluff and how much of that is just genuine delight to be no longer driving for Ferrari. It's a sliding scale.
So Dre,
the thing is that
Dre,
yeah.
let's take it back here. Forget about social media. Forget about that hype for a bit.
Yeah, talk to me.
They have laid down actual foundations to improve as a team.
They have.
Their factory is 10 times larger than it was 2 years ago. The size of their team is exponentially larger than it was 2 years ago. They have far more resources than they've ever had as Racing Point or Force India.
And I bet you they still get beaten by McLaren. The thing is, right, here's what worries me a little bit, right? What worries me a little bit is that, one, I'm still not sure about Lance Stroll, and I'll get to him in a minute, right? The second thing is that, one, McLaren are also another team that's on the up, which we'll get to next. And there's no guarantee Vettel is going to be the team leader we all want him to be in this team. And it worries me a little bit because there's not a lot of scope for improvement right away, because their target is going to be obvious: finish third. Like, beat McLaren. Because no one's expecting them to go, oh yeah, we're going to take on Red Bull and Mercedes straight out of the box. No one's expecting that, right? And the problem as well is that McLaren is now sharing their power unit. So any gains they had on engine power are now gone. That could also be a problem going forward. Like, there are still a fair amount of question marks regarding this team. And testing did not help. I know testing is always...
Unfortunately for them, all of their testing woes were a product of that very power unit manufacturer.
Yep.
Which were also shared with that power unit manufacturer's team. More on them later. I tend to get the impression that while this car has plenty of potential, I don't think they've unlocked it yet. I think Sebastian Vettel really needed some testing mileage because we know he maybe is a little bit slower to adapt to a certain car than another driver might be. And he only got, I think, 117 laps over the 3 days with constant gearbox and turbocharger problems. At the same time, this is really the only year that this team is going to be like this. They're the only team with an all-new monocoque this year. Gone is, in fact, the pink Mercedes, or indeed the green Mercedes. They've developed this car into what is very much its own beast.
Yeah, I was about to make a point. Like,
back.
If you watch F1 Tech Talk with Sam Collins, friend of the show, he said that this was like of the very few of the cars that, like, because a lot of these are just B-spec cars because we know we're getting a whole new set of... This is like one of the most new cars that's out there.
Yeah.
It's not just a copy-paste from the Mercedes from a year before. And when the car was working, what little was, people seem to get a very good impression of the car when it was running at speed.
Yeah. And I also think that this year's regulations regarding the floor and how some teams approach their car concept may be worse for Aston Martin this year, but after this, and we'll get to that in more detail with Mercedes, that's no longer a factor next year. For 2022, everything resets.
Yeah. I would love to see Vettel find his winning ways again with the team that, well, the last time the Aston Martin name was in Formula One, apart from just being a sticker on a Red Bull, it didn't go that hot. But that was like pre-F1 television.
It can only go better than it did with the
ideal situation. Vettel finds
car.
His winning ways again, because we know this team did win a race last year under a whole different identity. And I would love to see Stroll achieve his potential, because I feel like he does have potential. It's just, he's got to shake off that label that he's had with him fairly and unfairly since he broke in. I personally felt for a long, long time that he's much better than that label has been bestowed upon him.
It's one of the more aggravating labels for me because, look, you don't get pole around a track that was in a catastrophic state.
No,
I would say is the best way to put. Yeah, at Turkey last year, it was laughable how bad the track conditions were. You don't get pole and then dominate that race until a aerodynamic failure robs you of a potential win. If you're not made of the right stuff. And last year, more often, really until Perez hit that unbelievable stride late in the year, he was matching Perez blow for blow.
The problem is, I believe, didn't Stroll also have a positive COVID test? And when
he did,
that happened to him until like late in the season, he just tanked.
Germany.
Yeah, it happened there.
He caught COVID in Germany and then didn't score a point for 5 rounds.
Yeah, and not all of that was his fault. He had the mother of all crashes when he lost a tire, I believe, in Mugello.
Yeah.
So I think Stroll was better last year than his end tally showed.
Yes, that's fair. No, look, I was going to say, like, the issue I have is that this is year 5 for Lance Stroll, and he's already had a much bigger leash than most dudes around his level get in Formula One as it is.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we all
kind of helps when your dad owns the team.
Yeah, don't get me wrong,
also,
we all know the reasons why. And look, that's not his fault. Like, your dad wanted to see you do well in the sport, and, he just so happens to own the team you drive for.
yeah.
But, it helps. But it's hard to talk about him in that context because, there's not anywhere near as much consequence regarding his seat compared to most people because you feel like, well, Lawrence isn't going to drop his own son now, is he? Again, that would be a level of anti-nepotism that I think I'd ever never see, but,
When I look at Lance, I think his only truly weak year was 2019, where he just got demolished in qualifying. By Perez. But also consider in 2018, I don't think you could fuse Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton together and get any more points out of that fucking Williams.
No. It was bad.
So I think on the current sample size of him being in just a comfortable situation with the team, he's only gotten better over the last 2 years, and I hope that continues. For Vettel, dare I say it, I think he could grab a couple podiums this year if this car is in the midfield fight. And it suits him, and by all accounts, Otmar Safnauer has made it a point. They want to do everything they can to work with Sebastian to get the best from him and for him to get the best from the team. And that has been what Vettel's been asking for since he walked out of Red Bull, walked into Ferrari, and got told to shut up and drive. We'll just have to see how that one plays out, unfortunately.
I mentioned it in my preview video. They were saying all the right things. And again, I don't know how much of that is just PR fluff talk. But if they're giving Vettel the keys to the castle, then that's when he's at his absolute best.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the question mark. If time goes on, if Stroll gets hot early, who knows what could happen? Is the whispers about how good Vettel is as a driver still going to be there? Because he came off 2 bad years at Ferrari, not entirely on him, but this is like the last 2 years was what a lot of people who have not been Vettel fans for years have said was vindication.
A certain someone who writes only hot take pieces for a certain car blog, like how we should repave Sebring, and how Sebastian Vettel appears to have forgotten how to drive fast.
I'm not going to go into that, otherwise my head will explode. But yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, but I think Aston Martin fans need to lay off the jungle juice just a little bit there and calm down. Although, shout out to Sasha in the Discord who just went, good Sebring suspension impression there, Dre. Thanks, Sasha.
Boing, 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 boing.
Should we talk about Papaya?
Let's talk about McLaren. McLaren F1 team. McLaren Mercedes is back. A historic partnership that lasted 4 times as long as the other one that people went crazy about because that's the one Senna drove for. Anyway, Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo are going to make a fine team. Lando Norris got his first podium in his first fastest lap to kick off the year in Austria. Finished 9th in the standings. Daniel Ricciardo, as we mentioned, got Renault their first and second Formula One podium since their return as a manufacturer before reverting to Alpine. Ricciardo, of course, has the longer career with 7 wins, 31 podiums, 15 fast laps, and 3 pole positions. Norris is, of course, the 2018 Formula 2 runner-up and the 2017 European Formula 3 champion. And boy, people are running high with enthusiasm about the blue and orange this season.
This is the first time in a very long time. I said this a few days ago in another Discord. This is the first time that McLaren has looked like McLaren in a very long time. That they seem like a team that isn't just content to rebuild as they were the last 2 years. They want it all.
The rebuilding phase is over.
Yeah, the rebuilding phase, at least under these regulations, is over. This is what they've got. They've gained Mercedes power. They've produced a very tidy, innovative in some areas car that this is the first time in a few years where I can look at the McLaren and say, that's an interesting car. They've got something no one else has. They've got a phenomenal driver lineup. Andreas Seidel is a miracle worker. I know it from experience with the Porsche LMP1 program. The vibe around this team is very good.
It's very good. And King, your boy Daniel Ricciardo has signed a big multi-year deal, which you kind of feel like this may be his last shot to win a long elusive world championship that he didn't get at Red Bull and he certainly didn't get at Enstone.
Yeah, this is certainly the Ricciardo Hail Mary play. He knows that if he doesn't win a championship in the next 3 or 4 years, it's probably never going to happen. And McLaren is certainly in a position to improve. They're definitely, to use basketball terms, they're in win now mode. But we're going to have to wait a little while to see where they are in relations to the two teams we've yet to talk about so far.
I don't think they're in a position to challenge for wins yet, but considering where they were in 2018, where they were, let's be real honest with ourselves, the laughingstocks of Formula One after ditching Honda, screaming from the rooftops about having the best chassis, and then fighting with Williams for the second half of 2018. Yeah.
Those days are long gone.
This feels like a completely different team. And, switching engine manufacturers, usually pretty tough task, and testing that car ran like clockwork.
Ran great. Ran better than the factory team.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm in the same camp as King here with cautious trepidation. This is a McLaren. All of this from McLaren screams win now. You've hired a 32-year-old, borderline elite driver, don't get me wrong. Ricciardo is an outstanding talent. But Ricciardo's going into this knowing this is his last chance, because he signed a 3-year deal, so he's pretty much signed away the rest of his prime years to this team. Let's not forget, McLaren a year ago were not in the best of shape financially. They cut a lot of people to keep the doors open. They take a big old loan out from Bahrain. They've now sold off a third of their team to raise more money. This had better work out, because if they are still in this position in 3 years' time, we're going to look back on this team and go, for all the resources you generated, and for a lot of the stuff you've sold off, what have you got to show for it? Because, these are all big short-term plays, and we all sit here knowing it's a big gap to the big two.
These are the short-term plays, the ones that we can see right now. We have to also remember, McLaren's building an all-new wind tunnel, which is yet to be completed. McLaren's long-term play is lurking in the background for the new regulations next year. This year, again, a bit of an interim year, but I wouldn't put it past McLaren that at the sky has fallen race, McLaren claims their first win since 2012.
Yeah.
I would not put it past them, especially in Daniel Ricciardo's hands.
Yeah, kind of a bit of a segue away from the teams. But to me, the biggest overarching storyline for this Formula One season isn't what's happening on track. It's, number one, what's Formula One going to look like post-COVID? Also, is it logistically viable to have a 23-race schedule? That's pretty, everyone's running B-spec cars. If they can't do it this year, they wouldn't be able to do it any other year.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a big test for Formula One in all manner of aspects, from the people trackside to the people in the teams to the drivers and
the money
drivers
involved.
themselves, to the money involved.
I remember
Formula One cars for 23 races.
Yeah, I remember the last time McLaren made a bunch of win now moves, and it did not go well at all.
Yeah, because and especially the way the calendar is formatted, we're starting the year off pretty slow. We got one race in March, one race in April, then it is a hectic pace. We're between May 2nd and December 12th. We are having 21 races.
It's a loaded schedule. It's going to break people with the amount of triple headers that we've got. I think there's 4 triple headers in that block. Once we start with Portimao, I think is on May 3rd. It's going to be an absolute logistical nightmare sorting all of this out.
In some ways, they were smart about the way they formatted some of the triple headers. Like one of them is a Spa, Zandvoort, then Monza, which very closely packed together triple header. That isn't going to be like they actually thought about how they're going to put together these triple headers, but again, we don't know if it's going to work out well until we actually do it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up McLaren, Dre, your thoughts on what Generation Z's favorite driver needs to do for 2021 to be considered a success for him and the quadrant?
Gain 50,000 subscribers. Open a second account for highlights. No. In all seriousness, if he can run it even close to Daniel Ricciardo like he did with Carlos last year, that would be considered a win as far as I'm concerned, because Carlos is great, Daniel's even better. Daniel, I think, is a cut above Carlos. Daniel is a genuine, again, like I said, top 3 level driver in the field. And if Lando is able to keep him honest, that would be a big positive. The problem is that the other 2 guys in his class from similar years are Verstappen and Leclerc, and they had rockets put up their arse from the first year they were in Formula One. And that's something that just doesn't normally happen. Lando still batted above average for a rookie when he got a top 4 seat in the sport. But unfortunately, Verstappen and Leclerc are in race-winning level, top 2, top 3 level cars within, 25 career races. Second year guys. You have to
remember the state of McLaren. You have to remember the state of McLaren when Lando got in there. We were wondering if he was going to score points in his first year, because we didn't know where McLaren was going to be.
And that car ended up 4th in the championship. It was a big, big turnaround their second year at with Renault power. Like I said, the problem is that the other guys we're now going to be comparing him to as the future dudes of this sport all had a very unrealistic, unfair advantage to how their career started, because by all accounts, getting into elite level machinery in year 2 is not normal in Formula One. That does not normally happen. Even Lando, right now, I said, Lando was above average.
For a McLaren.
Right, Lando was above average to even get a top 4 seat when he debuted as a rookie 2 years ago. That's still above par for a brand new driver in Formula One these days. So, Lando, in one sense, was lucky and also kind of unlucky at the same time. It was really strange. It was a luck paradox, if you will.
Well, now I think the luck is swinging his way, where now McLaren are genuinely on the up and are starting to try and swing for regular competition, not just in the midfield, but trying to break free from the midfield.
Yeah, that should be the goal. If the goal is consolidate third, the stretch goal should be try and mitigate some of the gap to the big 2. If you do that, that's a net positive. If you're Lando, if you can keep Daniel Ricciardo honest, that's a great season as far as I'm concerned, because I think
the stage of his career, absolutely.
For a year 3 guy, they're going to be more critical of him, but at the same time, the level of competition just went up a notch as well for Lando Norris.
There's a 10-year gap in age. He has a lot of time. If he can match the Ricciardo this early on as a 22-year-old, he's got a... We already know how good Lando is. That's just going to make his stock higher.
As Hazel put it a couple of months ago, if Lando was one of these guys that didn't sign a long-term extension last year and was going to be a free agent at the end of the season, which, by the way, half the grid will be at the end of this season, he'd be the number 1 guy on the list people will be gunning after, probably after Lewis Hamilton. Because he ticks every box. He's young, he's fast as hell, and he's extremely likable. That is... You've got a marketing wet dream and a really talented young British driver under your wing. He'd be extremely high value on any big board. So, there's a lot to like about Lando. And like I said, if you can keep Ricciardo honest, that's an excellent season. And I don't think it's fair we compare him to Verstappen and Leclerc, who had vastly different careers going in and unfamiliar situations happen to their early careers in Formula One that is way, way, way above par, because the sport's changed. I think the sport's changed in the sense of we expect younger drivers to do more now, because we are more excited and more engaged about younger talent than we've ever been in Formula One. Again, nothing to do with Twitter.
The
Moving
olds. Screw the olds. Thank you much for making it this far, by the way. We've got our present now. It's the big four, starting with Red Bull Racing Honda and the RB16B, driven by Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Max Verstappen, 24 years old from the Netherlands, has 10 wins, 42 podiums, 3 pole positions, 10 fastest laps in the 96 races since Spain of 2016 when he joined the team. He finished third in the F1 Championship the last 2 years running. He is, of course, F1's youngest ever driver and race winner. Sergio Perez won last year's Sakir Grand Prix, driving for the team that is now Aston Martin. He has 10 podiums, 706 points in 195 races and 191 starts. Last year, he was best of the rest, 4th in the 2020 F1 standings. This is the last year of Honda as Honda. These same engines will exist, but under a different name. And it seems like Red Bull Racing won the preseason testing championship and won it by a mile and a stretch. For the first time in a decade, does this possibly mean Red Bull are back?
Stop it, Dre. Now, it's the hope that gets you, isn't it? I mean, this is the first time Red Bull has had what could be considered a good preseason in a decade.
A long
since 2011. In 2012, they stunk in preseason. In 2013, they were mid. All throughout the turbo hybrid era. I mean, geez, for a couple of years, they kept having to put their fires on their cars out.
Mm-hmm.
This is uncharted territory in this era of F1.
Yeah.
It's a
Red Bull
strange
look
one.
good. They don't just look good, they look great. Last year, we knew the car was fast. We also knew that Max Verstappen was having to have a fist fight with it to just keep it from spinning out at the end of the corner.
To say nothing of reserve driver Alexander Albon. Yes, now a reserve driver in 2021.
The redacted Alexander Albon.
Who?
Exiled to DTM.
Hang on.
Red Bull.
Horsey's dad. Horsey's dad, you remember him?
I have a visual representation of the size of the amount of Kool-Aid people are drinking, hoping that Red Bull are going to match Mercedes.
Yeah. I have no Kool-Aid whatsoever.
Yeah, like to paraphrase our now over time on the Discord server watching the America's Cup. One thing that's always said about the America's Cup that based on the advantage that the cup holders, or in Formula One's case, the champions have, it is almost impossible for anyone else to beat them. But that's what keeps you engaged. That's what gives you hope that someone could beat them. And it's the same thing with Red Bull. We see that there's a chance that they could beat Mercedes. And everyone out there is like, maybe this year's the year.
We're rubbing our hands like Birdman back here.
Scuderia or Ferrari were invincible right up until the FIA put a gun to their kneecaps. And this Red Bull is the first one in a couple of years as well, where it actually looks good out on track. It doesn't look like it's trying to rip Max Verstappen's head off. And Sergio Perez, for his credit, seemed to acclimatize to the car pretty damn quick.
It's good. We've been here before.
We're here every year. We're here every year.
I refuse to drink that large bottle of Kool-Aid now halfway down my bed.
It's one of those 32-ounce Red Bulls.
But it's orange.
Look, we do this year after year, and as King was absolutely on the nose. It's the hope that gets you. It's the almost, because let's be honest, a lot of casual and a lot of neutral viewers want to see Mercedes taken down a peg. They're a little bit tired of Lewis Hamilton winning. Just don't mention that on social media, otherwise you'll be seen as the enemy of the state. A lot of neutrals, like with all dominant sports, they want to see Mercedes taken down a peg. So I understand why people are going to drink the Kool-Aid, thinking that there's a hope that Red Bull can take the fight to Mercedes. One, I think people have forgotten just how far away Red Bull were last year. They won 2 races out of 17 last season, and one of them, their lead driver had COVID-19. Or at least was recovering from COVID-19. And that guy had lost 2/3 of a stone in weight in the space of 10 days when he came to get back in a car again. Like, there was not going to be a challenge from Mercedes on that final race. And let's not forget, that was a car that hadn't been touched since Belgium of last season. So, like, they are probably somewhere between 0.4 and 0.6 off where Mercedes were at the end of last season. That's a huge gap to make up.
And, despite Max Verstappen winning that last race, he still finished third in the Drivers' Championship. Like,
for all the shit we give Valtteri Bottas, Verstappen was still behind him last year. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that is also Red Bull's problem because they were not great with reliability last year either. There was a little bit of bad luck involved with Max here and there. But they had a couple of nasty DNFs as well. And Red Bull are probably going to have to be something near perfect to even give Mercs something to think about. Like, I said it on my video preview, get within 100 points of Mercs and that would be considered a really good season. They need to start thinking about, can we win 8 to 10 races as opposed to the 2 to 4 they normally ban around. Yeah, they need to double that win count. They need to treble that win count for me to sit down and say, yeah, this team's really made progress. Because if they're only winning 2 to 4 rounds a year, it doesn't matter, because they'll be in the same spot they've roughly always been in this entire V6 hybrid era. Don't get me wrong.
The difference is, every year, what's the theme with Red Bull? They start the year off, and sanitation workers are seen in Milton Keynes. They can't take that smell from how bad the car is. And then they develop. And then they find their problem. And then they start being competitive at the end of the year. I don't get that vibe at all from this car. It looks like they get this car right off the bat.
But then again,
is that enough? That is not enough. That alone is not enough to beat Mercedes. But what it does mean is that I don't think Red Bull's on the back foot like they usually are.
Though again, we are looking through this frame that this was the shortest preseason testing period in the modern history of the sport. We only had 3 days of testing.
And yet, on the first day, the car looked fucking awful in the morning. It looked like the usual Red Bull spin. And then by afternoon, yeah, it's a trap. I'm not saying they're going to beat Mercedes. I don't think they're going to beat Mercedes. But I do think it's going to be a significantly closer fight than last year.
Unlike certain British Good Morning programs, I'm here to bring balance to the force. Are
you also about to walk off the set in rage that you were called out by a weatherman?
No, there's no disgraceful behaviour for me to walk out on yet. I've not got it in for the royal family yet. Not publicly, anyway.
Not yet.
But no, look, we've been here. I've seen this story too many times with Red Bull for me to start believing in anything other than the usual. 2 to 4 wins. Verstappen will get the occasional spectacular performance out and probably win 2 or 3 Grand Prix a year. And then we'll all go, oh, look how great Max is. And then, look, don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic driver. Number 2 in the world comfortably right now. But the biggest problem with Red Bull is not the quality of their car. The biggest problem they've had right now is the lack of a second scorer. And there is no guarantee that Sergio Perez is going to be that guy either. And again, he might be pre-season testing champion here in terms of individuality, laps logged, and overall speed. But Perez needs to be scoring 250 points this season, minimum, to, again, even think about mounting an overall title challenge. Because Max can be spectacular. It won't mean jack shit if the second car ain't doing anything. So
Correct.
there's a lot of issues with that Red Bull that they need to address if they want to give Mercs a fight. And it's not necessarily because Red Bull are terrible. It's just because we're dealing with the greatest team that this sport has ever seen. And that's going to be the problem going forward.
I think you all hit the nail on the head. Verstappen is a great driver. Sergio Perez has proven time and time again that he can score points, even when the conditions don't necessarily call for him to score points. And this car does look better than it has at this stage in years past, but there is a bit of current to grave on, and ultimately, because Formula One is a sport of nothing else but inertia, it's going to be closer. I just don't think they're going to get over the hump.
It's a trap!
Oh my god.
You've made it this far. Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. Sir Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. Sir Lewis Hamilton is a 7-time Formula One world champion. Most wins, most poles, most podiums, most points, 6 seasons with 10 wins or more. Valtteri Bottas, 9 wins, 56 podiums, 16 poles, 15 fast lap, 1,512 points, and most of that comes with his tenure at Mercedes. He's a 2-time Formula One vice champion. I'll say this for free, Valtteri Bottas, if nothing else, just go out there and have a career year just so you can boost your value on the free agent market. Don't do it for us. Don't do it for us.
We've moved on to Bottas NT Workstation 4.0.
Yeah.
No. Is it better or worse than Windows 95?
To be determined.
Worse than Windows
Mercedes had their worst preseason test of the turbo hybrid era.
God damn it, Jim. God damn it, Jim. You did it again.
So, the car had repeated gearbox troubles. The car looked like a savage bastard out on track, a bit like the Red Bull did last year, where Lewis Hamilton could not keep the thing on the road. They covered the least mileage of any team.
How many times did Lewis Hamilton spin in testing?
Twice.
Compared to how many times he spun
No, I think he spun 4 times.
4?
He spun quite a few. Yeah. He spun more in testing than I've seen him spin in fucking years. Mercedes look not so much hurt, because I think hurt is the wrong way to term it. I think these new floor regulations have caught them out where I think it has very heavily affected where the sweet spot on their car is and where it's happy. Not only have they not found that, I mean, they were having trouble just hanging on to that car at all. It's not very it's not a very Mercedes vibe. Usually, even when they're slow, correct? Correct.
So question number 1, does any of this matter?
Yes. Because...
You sure?
Mercedes are used to being slow in preseason testing. We see it every year. They don't post any lap times. They just pound around for a couple hundred laps every day.
Did you know that intentionally spinning the car is a form of sandbagging?
Bit of high-risk sandbag. It was actually, the sandbags in the Mercedes were so big, they triggered a sandstorm on day 1 of testing, which enveloped the track for really the second half of the day.
Narrative aside, though.
This is weird.
Yeah.
I'm used to watching Mercedes be slow. Stop, Dre. Did you watch testing? Did you waste your time watching testing?
I know I didn't. I got some good sleep.
If Mercedes looked like this and they had their typical insane amount of mileage on the car, I would say this is business as usual. I think Mercedes aren't hurt, but I think they are on the back foot compared to what we think of Mercedes as, which is this invulnerable, unstoppable team.
Yeah.
And they'll figure it out by Portimao, and then they'll win 15 in a row, and it won't matter. Next.
But then, there's another very important part of this. Does Mercedes really want to blow 2022 on fixing the car if indeed there is a problem? This is the worst year to start on the back foot. I know what Red Bull will do. They'll develop the car until the 23rd race in the season, say fuck 2022.
Yeah. Red Bull will throw... we know, Red Bull will throw the house at this. Like, Mercedes might throw the house at this.
We know from history. Yeah, we know from history Mercedes does not do that. If they're if we reach mid-season and whatever the car is at mid-season, that's their car for the year. They're not. Yeah. No matter how good or bad it is, they're not going to develop it past that point. They're focusing on.
The funny thing is, though, is Toto Wolff said after the test, "quote We found the fly in the suit. We found the hair in the suit."
What else are you gonna say? No, we don't know what's wrong with our car, guys.
Yeah, so...
that was out of context. That is saying, yeah, we found there is a problem with the car. That's not saying we found the fix for the problem.
No.
I think the Mercedes we saw in testing is not necessarily the car we'll see at round one.
Not even near.
I'm not something on the 2019 level where they just threw the whole car away and brought a new one for week 2. But at the same time, that's a very risky strategy when you had 3 days of testing and potentially hundreds of laps to throw at the problem, and instead you waited until FP1 of round 1.
Yeah.
Well,
typically, that's never been a good strategy.
Because Merck said apparently they had no plans to do a race sim during that test anyway, so the lack of lap time didn't really bother them. Their words, not mine.
The lap time never matters for Mercedes.
No, I'm talking about lack of laps in general, because apparently their plan was they were never going to do a full race sim.
I don't believe
during
that
this test
for
anyway. If you want to believe them or not, it's up to you. But
in testing, there's only one barometer, and that's mileage.
Yeah, and Mercedes has always been a mileage team. They're not suddenly going to change their testing philosophy just out of the blue suddenly just for this year.
I don't think they're in the trouble that some people think they're in. I think that they have some hard work ahead of them to try and find what's wrong and correct it. Mercedes are the king of problem solvers. Well, they have a problem. It's visible. Now it's time to go solve it.
Yeah, and they have time. It is 6 weeks until race 3 of the season.
Yeah. They have a month and a half, and it's a 23 race season. They can even afford to have a couple of bad rounds and fix the problem down the road. It's not like if there's there's a lot more leverage to play with when this season is 6 races bigger than last season's, as it stands.
Yeah.
But it's. They can afford to coast to second to fourth for a few bad rounds, as Sasha's pointing out in our Discord right now, and then still be fine.
But they can't this year, though. Because if they have a problem and they have to devote resources, you want to end development this year as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Sure.
If we saw the Mercedes from last year where we looked at it in preseason testing and thought, yeah, that car's basically got infinite grip.
Yeah.
And as it played out, that's what happened. If they had that advantage coming into this year, there would be no development. Yeah. They would have already started on 2022.
Yeah, because there is time as in just like empty time, and then there's burning races. They can't afford that. They need to get this car to where they feel they have control over this championship as soon as possible so they can shift focus to next year.
And the blessing for them,
the blessing for that is that Red Bull, we still don't know about the Red Bull car number 2. And that could be an even more critical part of this championship fight than we gave it credit for a year ago. We don't know how good Checo's going to be.
The bigger problem for them is that there's no team that does in-season development like Red Bull. Yeah. They have the best in-season development every year, whether that's because they start the year off fucking terrible like they did last year, where they were in a yawning chasm between the whole field and then Mercedes. It's the two teams together at the front. It's the mix of Red Bull having their best preseason in a decade and Mercedes having their worst of the engine era. And because of the dynamic of when do you cut development and move on to 2022, it makes it very interesting which team is going to just throw the house at this year, Hail Mary, get that championship before the new cars come in, and which one, if they're on the back foot, just moves on.
Yeah.
It's more interesting than it is in usual years where we see, the Red Bull looks like a death trap in testing, and Mercedes goes and whoops everyone's ass by a second in round 1,
and it won't matter.
By the way, I'm not even going to entertain the idea that Lewis Hamilton has COVID rust.
No, none of that.
No, and honestly, it's like, we've painted a fantastic picture of something potentially interesting, and I still think there is a better than coin flip chance Merckx rolls up to the opening round and curb stomps everybody again. Because again, we've seen this story before. Maybe not to this extreme, but certainly
We've never seen it with Red Bull. We saw it plenty of times with Ferrari, and Ferrari is Ferrari, which is to say Ferrari is the worst. This is the first time going into a season where Red Bull hasn't looked like a dumpster fire going into round one.
Where art thou, Mercedes? I don't know. Look, it's... I know a lot. Like, I don't know how much of it is genuine concern and how much of it is we just want to see Mercs get beaten. And it's a hard river to cross when it comes to a lot of that discourse, because the whole big narrative coming out of testing was that Mercedes might be vulnerable, Red Bull looked really good. You factor those two in together, you put it in a blender, you hit frappe, and there you go. There's your 2021 hope for a season that looked like, until testing, there was none. So I get why people want to be excited and have gotten their dander up over this.
Don't get me wrong. I don't want to see Max Verstappen win a championship. I respect his talent, but I can't stand that little prick.
No, he's a bastard, but he's a damn good racing driver, unfortunately. And yeah, like...
Again, that whole 8 brain cells theory that I talked about in Ferrari?
Yeah, look,
it extends here.
And the funny thing is, we've barely even mentioned their drivers because we haven't had to. This is genuinely one of the most interesting teams for driver lineups we've got, mostly because all 3 of their main protagonists are out of contract at the end of this season. Hamilton's out of contract, Bottas is out of contract, and George Russell is out of contract for next season.
What I want to see... I don't want to see Lewis Hamilton be so goddamn bored this year that he forgets start procedures and is getting penalties and losing races because he gets to operate at like 70% because his car's so busted and Valtteri is
Don't
whack.
mention that on the internet. We're going to be killed.
They can be in my inbox. I do not care. Just because he has a good car does not devalue him as a driver, and vice versa. I want to see more than last year, where we saw round 1 and already knew it was dead.
Yeah. We can only hope. So, before we get out of Dodge, is there any movement on the obvious predictions for driver and constructors titles?
No. I got some interesting prop bets later on, as well as championship odds.
Go on.
Do I do it to be a contrarian?
No! We don't do that here.
Trey, it's all you ever do.
That's my job. That's my job on the show.
When am I ever the contrarian on this show? Don't all laugh. Thank you, King. See? King gets it down there. Don't you shake your head. Okay. RJ, what's next?